Hi guys, TacticalRab here and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far the Rostermania saga continues and the big story last night was coming out of the Carolina Royal Ravens. They confirmed a couple of weeks ago that their team for the Esports World Cup in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia would be the same as they used at Major 4, but now they have changed their mind. Clayster is the first man to go, the talisman of the team, the most tenured player in many ways in the history of competitive Call of Duty Esports, is gone from the organisation, dropped, released, and Clay said a few months ago now that if he had to go through Rostermania again, he wouldn't bother and would just call it a day, but he does confirm potentially open to other opportunities. Is this a big mistake from the Ravens? What's next for Clay? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We will of course get into the World Cup stuff because that is very much relevant to what's going on with Ravens at the present time. But these boys, they won the Esports World Cup for the Warzone side. So the Falcons guys, I mean, they dominated it, frankly. There was no one else that was going to win this tournament. And interesting, definitely, that, Team Falcons, of course, Saudi Arabian owned, they come through effectively by the best Warzone team and then win the Esports World Cup. So we'll see if there's anything like that that could happen on the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 side, because we're going to talk a bit about that later on today. Some interesting developments there. This was, of course, the team that was putting the show on. Here's Puckett on the bottom left-hand side. Not sure if Puckett's going to stay and do like other hosting, interviewing stuff over the next couple of weeks, but I imagine he's going to be back for the Modern Warfare 3 tournament, which is going to happen in the middle of August. But this is week 1, and the COD stuff in regular multiplayer with a bigger prize pool actually is taking place pretty much bang smack in the middle of August. But yeah, congrats to these guys. They take the win. There's just lots to talk about this, right? Because the events, the setup is mega, right? The way they produce everything. But obviously, if you guys have like watched it, you may not have watched it just because there isn't quite the social media buzz or the interaction. I'm pretty sure Mr. Adam Apicella talked about this actually. Obviously, an esports engine guy who's wanting to getting back involved in the production world, is that, they're executing things very well. They've got the money to do it, but actually getting like the hype around the tournament and the engagement around the tournament on socials and getting people to tune in is potentially another challenge in and of itself. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting observation, to be honest. But yes, Hisoka says we are your Warzone World Cup champs. They take home $250,000 between them, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, pretty crazy stuff that they earned in a couple of days, arguably way more than a Boston Breach did this entire season. Speaking of Boston, Beans here trying to get inspired, I imagine, ahead of his next adventure, because he's probably not going to be on Boston anymore. Still, he's technically still there. I mean, he's still got Boston in his name, and who knows? Maybe they're going to change their mind, Boston, in terms of what they do, but there were rumours over the last couple of days what roster they're going to be forming, and that Beans might potentially go to Rocker, but who knows what's actually going to happen, because no official confirmation has come out from any of those organisations as of yet. But let's talk about some of the other teams in Rostermania, because these were the 4 that didn't make it to the World Championship. So what do? They've got to build a roster, firstly, for the World Cup, and then for Black Ops 6. Ideally, the same roster, right? You build a team now, you form it for the World Cup, you do well there, and then, okay, maybe if some of the other top teams don't, you might even have some upgrade potential on paper, but you want to try and form the best team you can right now, going to the World Cup, see how it goes, and then, of course, when Black Ops 6 comes out, there's almost always a feeling sometimes of, oh, well, it's a tryout game, so do we get some sort of players that were good at other tryout games? I don't know if that really works too well in reality. I think you've just got to form the best COD team you can right now, and then if it suits the new game, then it suits the new game. But, good players will suit every COD title, obviously. So obviously there was some talk about what Ravens, did wrong. Did they keep GodRx too long? Lost too many Game 5s? I think online, frankly, was what cost Ravens this year. The GodRx decision, they kept him maybe longer than they could or should have done. He was around for, a fair bit of the stage 1, but he never played Major 1. So I think in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't really the reason why they didn't make it. But of course, you look at these respective teams, Gwyn would be the man on Ravens that really they're going to, I imagine, try to be keeping. And even for Vegas, you got to wonder. I will say, just looking at these 4 teams, is there a common trend in the way they were formed? Maybe, right? You look at Boston, okay, they didn't have Slasher forever, but world champion AR, very tenured AR player. The team was best when it had Slasher on, but it still wasn't great. Minnesota Rocker had Accuracy. Okay, Accuracy not a world championship winner, but a similar story applies. Veteran AR leader. Same thing, I guess, you can look at for Attach. Now he's a veteran AR, right? He used to be a rookie SMG, right? Back in the day when he won the world championship back in 2015, but still kind of slower veteran AR player who's a world champion, and the same applies to Clay. And, you know, those four teams didn't make champs, right? So is there a bit of a trend there in terms of the old guard not finding themselves in the promising position they once were? And, you know, is it time for some of these guys to move on? I think that was a question that was raised big time yesterday, especially as a result of this. So I think Clay actually did his tweets before the Ravens one came out. I imagine because he was deeply frustrated with the decision, seemingly as well because of the way that it was handled, right? Clay talks, we'll see some of the tweets in a second about like basically fake friends and all this, who told him certain things and then things went a different way. So Ravens confirm we're announcing the release of Clay as a complete free agent, an icon of the scene, a driving force behind our season. Want to thank Clay for his time, wishing the best for the future. So as Clay says, free agent for the esports, I guess he means esports World Cup really. I think they use usually EWC, but whatever, you get what he means, and next year. So first of all, straight up confirming in the first line, it ain't over yet for him. Like, he's not necessarily gonna just call it a day and retire. He actually, his initial statement says quite the opposite, that, you know what, they've dropped me, but I'm still looking to play. And he made this point actually on the flank watch party during the major 4. He was sitting on the couch and kind of saying, look, I don't really want to go through the Rostermania chaos of trying to finesse a spot or whatever over those few months, but I do want to play in Black Ops 6. So, you know, Clay has to make his mind up on that. I think what Clay doesn't want to do is go through like 3 to 4 months of not being on a team, not getting paid, and having to constantly finesse, join this group chat, join that group chat, chat to this guy, chat to that guy, to then get a minimum salary spot for next year anyway. Like, if Clay gets an offer from a better team that's going to pay more money, then I think it probably makes sense for him to continue. And also, given the Esports World Cup is a thing, he might get a team there, and then they might keep him on, so he doesn't have to worry about all the drama. So I think it's interesting for Clay, definitely. But as he says, played the game all year, would like to play at the biggest tournaments, got a lot to say, but there's really no point. Got to be more selfish and play better if I want to keep my spot on the teams. It's pretty interesting to hear this perspective, right, from Clay, that his feeling is, and this, to be fair, is a feeling of many of the players on the bottom half of the league, that they're playing sometimes to win, but often the team isn't good enough to win. And therefore, if you're playing to win, but your numbers aren't so good as some of your teammates, you're going to get dropped. So the theory is sometimes, well, maybe it's about playing for yourself at times, although if I'm an organization and I'm trying to sign Clay and I'm hearing, well, maybe I've got to be more selfish to keep my spots, then I'm like, do I want to sign this guy? I don't know. Intrigued your thoughts in the comments. He did make a couple of other statements that he then went on to delete, actually, but I thought I'd go through them real quick. We know that Clay wears his heart on his sleeve, right? That's always how it's been. That's how it will be. And I think it's nice to see, you know, a personality being vulnerable in the community like this, because he talks about exactly what's been going on. Like, his life has been challenged, moving out there, like the situation that happened when he was back in Texas, moving out to North Carolina. And as he says, my life's been crashing down over the last couple of years. This might be the final nail in the coffin. Immense sadness, so much regret when all I do is pour myself into my job, my loved ones, feel like it's never enough. So, you know, I'm sure Clay's feeling a little bit better today, because yesterday I'm sure was a difficult day for him. And as he says, don't even really know what I want to do. Part of me just wants to shut down all social media and just disappear, feeling incredibly lost with fake promises and fake people all around me all the time. So sick of this. So, you know, I think this is probably in his personal life as well, but also on the team stuff, right? I'm just wondering whether, okay, Fellow was a friend, okay, presumably is still a friend on the team, and Brian Saint, who is the head coach of the team and presumably the decision maker, good friends with Clay. So, you know, there was always a theory of, well, will they ever get rid of Clay? Because Brian Saint's making the calls, you would think, and they're boys. So maybe Clay, I don't know, maybe Brian Saint told Clay, like, oh no, you know, I got you, brother, like, you ain't going anywhere type thing, got this covered. And then when push comes to shove, Brian Saint's looking at it thinking, well, damn, if I keep Clay around and we still suck, I'm probably going to lose my job. So, yeah, sorry, Clay, like, you got to go type thing. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of piece together what might have happened here behind the scenes for Clay to be making statements like that. But as Clay then goes on to say, you know what, maybe competing isn't for me anymore. Any opportunities outside of playing, bang my line, literally open to anything at this point. Think that it might be time, right? So this is kind of the final word that Clay puts on it. Initially, he said, like, I'm a free agent, I'm ready to go again. And then he says, well, if that doesn't really work, maybe it is about time that I just call it a day competing and just do basically anything else at this point. So, yes, Bo's, obviously Bo's, and like, they're good friends, so they're not like going at each other here or anything like that. But as he says, said this last year too, buddy, just seeing what my options are, which is true, right? Like, he could still definitely come back to competing, and there's a debate on whether this is a good decision for Ravens or not. Now, has Clay been great this season? No. Has he been great for the last couple of years? No. in my opinion. But is he still potentially a valuable asset to a team? I do think yes. I always think Clay's like a massive amplifier. I genuinely think if you put Clay on a better team, like he would actually play better and that team probably improves. It's just when Clay's on these teams that aren't so good, we're not the best players, and especially because there's so much online COD, like there's a few reasons why Clay is not always going to be a massively positive attribute to a team at times. But he also does bring a massive fan base, right? I mean, you look at the Vegas Legion team last year, a lot of their fans, because they were pretty well supported, basically went to Ravens. And Ravens are pretty much just cutting off all that fan base, realistically speaking. And if you're a team like Ravens or anyone down there that are not going to be competing on a regular basis for event victories, probably it makes a lot of sense to try and actually build a bit of a fan base, right? But I guess the risk is that you could build a fan base, Clay leaves at some point because he's going to retire eventually, and then you lose the fan base anyway. But nonetheless, that is the problem right now for Ravens, is that, is this decision actually going to be a good business move for them in the longer term? Because, having Clay can be a very valuable asset. So these are just his Lion Man cards. We saw the 99 overall that he had back at Major 1 way back in 2021, and he was good in that Cold War season, no doubt about it. The starter Vanguard wasn't great, of course. He was dropped from the team on the Subliners, joined the Vegas guys last season, was pretty good actually over the course of the year, I would say. This year was up and down, but finished on a pretty poor stage. So what do you guys think is next for Clayster, right? These are the 12 teams in the league. There are several of these teams that will make changes for next season. Probably the vast majority will. I'm expecting that at least 10 teams, I think, will make changes this off-season. Who knows what's going to happen with a team like FaZe, depending on where they finish at champs. That's what happens at top, but obviously Clay isn't going to be going there. Of all these other teams in the middle low, they will make moves. I've always thought, like, could Clay to Thieves with like Ghosty or something actually make a better sense? Because if that was a possibility and Thieves were interested, then I think Clay would be like, yeah, I'm down to make that work, because then obviously good opportunity, probably more money and probably less drama in terms of Rostermania and stuff. That's a possibility. Outside of that, difficult to say. And also for Clayster, which teams could he potentially join for the World Cup? That's relatively limited as well. But Rocker, they're having a bit of a rebuild, although I'm not sure that if Gunless is kept as we think that he might be, is Clay and Gunless really going to work? I'm not so convinced. We saw those two actually did a swap back in the day between FaZe and United, way back in that Infinite Warfare season, of course. But, and obviously Boston, we don't really know what they're up to. So it's tough to imagine where Clay exactly finds himself for next year. And therefore, there have been possibilities that maybe now just is the time, right? Like an incredible career for Clay, incredibly tenured, didn't finish out his career maybe in the way that he would have liked to in hindsight if he does go out here. But nonetheless, you can't take away anything from what Clay's accomplished over his, just legendary career, playing for so many organizations, so many championship victories, so many, obviously, 3 rings, right, which is something that's only been achieved still by 3 players. And this is potentially a next step that people are talking about, right, because Clay last year when he was out and he was briefly on the desk did a phenomenal job, I thought he was really, really good at this. Puckett was giving him a lot of praise, and there was a talk as to whether, could the CDL make an update here to the way they do the desk? Do they want to keep going with the Puckett Nameless Alleycat thing? Do they want to bring in somebody else? Like, do they bring in a 4th person? Could Clay be there full time? Do they make some changes to the desk? I don't know. But I think it would be really interesting to see if this was the case, if they said, look, Clay, do you just want to do this gig on a full-time basis? You were great before. We can offer you this role for like the entire season. Let's see how it goes type thing. That might be very interesting for Clay, and I think he'd be really good at that particular situation. But what that means for the rest of the desk and all these other things, that's a bit of a question mark. And also the way they run the desk in general, whether, they need to change some things around there just to make it a more entertaining segment, like because death segments in most esports I think are pretty dull. In regular sports sometimes they do it pretty well because they're not unwilling to have a bicker with each other and debate points rather than not really disagreeing on too much. And obviously that's what Scrappy said, right? Like after Clay went out of the tournament and Scrappy was like, get back on the desk, buddy, or whatever, and then Clay told him, well, you know what he told him at this point. But very much interested to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Wishing the best for Clayster. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.